Now hush up, young-ons, lean close round this fire, for I got me a tale older'n the hills, and if we don't keep it alive, well, it'll slip away like smoke on the night wind. These stories, they's meant to be passed on, whispered from one mouth to the next, so's the world don't forget, and by golly, when you hear it, you'll feel the truth sittin' heavy, same as I did when I first got told. Don't just sit wide-eyed, carry it with you. Pass it on, tell your own talies someday, else the fire of memory dies. Now, reckon you best settle down, for this one here is about a man who laid himself down to rest, and woke up to a world he couldn't rightly call his own. The fire crackles low, sparks shootin' skyward like restless souls, and the night wind rustles the pines above us. You can smell the pine pitch burnin', sharp and sweet, and the smoke curls upward, slippin' twixt the stars. I see you leanin' in close, eyes all big, so I'll drop my voice low, like them hills themselves are listening. There once lived a feller named Rip Van Winkle. Lordy, he was a kind-hearted soul, tall and lanky, with a face lined by both laughter and worry. Rip weren't much for hard labor, leastways not the kind that made the fields yield proper, and that set his wife into many a sharp-tongued fit. But don't go thinkin' he was lazy, nah. He had a way 'bout him that drew in the young-uns, always fixing their toys, mending the neighbors' fences, lending a hand where nobody else would. Folks liked Rip sure as shootin'. The children trailed him like chicks follow a hen, and the dogs wagged their tails when he passed by. Yet back at his own home, he found no peace, for Dame Van Winkle scolded him fierce, saying his days was wasted and his farm left ragged. One evening, when the sun dipped low and the ridges turned purple as bruises, Rip wandered up into the wild mountains, cocking his old dog Wolf along. The air smelled of moss and stone, and the river below sang a lonesome tune. He'd done this often enough, looking for quiet away from the clamor of his wife's voice. He stretched himself 'neath the trees, gazing at clouds drifting like ghost ships, and thought how fine it'd be to have a life of peace. No burdens, no hollerin', no chores gnawin' at his back. Now, don't you wonder, young'uns, what happens when a man wishes too hard for quiet? Sometimes the woods hear, and the woods answer. By and by, Rip heard a sound echo down the slope, a knockin', steady-like, rollin' through the hush of evening. Wolf pricked his ears, growlin' low, but Rip, curious as a boy, rose to see. He found himself face to face with a strange-looking feller, dressed old-fashioned even for those days, hauling a keg on his shoulder. Without a word, the man beckoned Rip to follow, and though Wolf whined, Rip felt a pull stronger than sense itself. They climbed higher, deep into the gorge, where rocks jutted like teeth and shadows grew thick as tar. There, Rip come upon a whole company of queer folk, playing ninepins by the thunder of the cliffs. Their faces was solemn, their clothes out of another age, and every strike of the ball echoed like storm rolling off the peaks. Rip's heart thumped, but he was given a flagon from that keg, and being a man who never turned down good drink, he sipped. One sip turned to another, till his head felt light and his eyes heavy. The last thing he saw was Wolf laying close, ears drooping, before the world spun and darkness wrapped him in its arms. Asterisk, when Rip's eyes fluttered open, the world had shifted, though he scarce knew it yet. The morning air lay cool on his face, the smell of damp earth and pine needles fresh as if the woods had washed themselves clean overnight. He stirred, bones stiff as fence posts, and called soft-like for Wolf. But the dog weren't there. No bark, no wag, no rustle in the brush. Rip pushed himself upright, rubbing his temples, for his head felt heavy as a stone jug. "Lordy," he muttered, "that was some potent brew." He looked around, expecting to spy them strange men with their ninepins and solemn faces. But the hollow lay empty, still as a graveyard. He tottered down the slope, reckoning he'd best get home before Dame Van Winkle's tongue lashed him raw. Yet the trail looked foreign somehow. Trees grown taller, rocks shifted, paths swallowed by weeds. The fire crackling before us now reminds me of how Rip's heart crackled too, uneasy and unsure. You ever felt that, young uns? When the world looks the same but smells different, sounds different, like it's wearing a mask? By golly, Rip felt it deep in his bones. When he reached the edge of his village, Rip stopped dead. Houses looked altered, roofs sagged or built higher, fences changed, doors painted strange colors. The very folks moving about the street seemed odd to him, faces new, clothes cut different. He waved once to a man passing, but the stranger only stared as though Rip were some wandering beggar. Children peeked from behind skirts, whispering, their eyes wide at his beard, which had grown long and white as mountain snow. Rip touched it in disbelief last, he recalled. It weren't but a short scruff. He stumbled on, calling out names he knew, yet nobody answered with kinship. Where was his old friend Nicholas? Where the stout innkeeper he often drank with? The tavern itself bore a new sign, paint fresh, and inside he heard loud talk of elections, liberty, and a man named Washington, words that made no sense to him. Rip sat heavy on a bench, head swimming, while the crowd eyed him with suspicion. Some muttered he looked like a ghost come back. Others reckoned he was daft. Children, I see your mouths hang open, and I'll tell you Rip weren't dreaming. He asked after his wife, Dame Van Winkle, but folks shrugged or laughed, saying she'd been dead this many years. Dead. He near dropped to the ground with the news. As for Wolf, nobody'd seen such a dog in an age. The farm he once tended, ragged though it was, now lay in ruins, overtaken by weeds and briars. Not a hoe, not a fence post stood where he'd left it. His own house was crumbling, roof sagged, windows broken, as if abandoned near 2 decades. Rip staggered through the crowd, calling for any familiar face, and at last he spied a woman who looked much like his wife once had, only softer, worn by years. She was his very own daughter, grown to womanhood while he slumbered. At her side clung children of her own, and she near fainted seeing her long-lost father standing there like death returned. She led him home, comforting him, though her eyes shone with wonder and fear. By the fire here, I can see y'all shivering, imagining waking one morning to find the whole world moved on without ya. Rip Van Winkle, once a neighbor, a husband, a father, had slept clear through 20 years, gone missing from his own life while history thundered past. Now, young uns, picture Rip sitting by his daughter's hearth, the firelight flickering same as ours tonight, but the world outside changed beyond reckoning. He scratched his snowy beard, eyes wandering the room like a man searching for a dream that slipped off. His daughter, bless her, tended him kindly, yet she could scarce believe the tale he told, how he'd wandered into the mountains, drunk strange liquor with them ghostly folk, and laid down to sleep, only to wake when 20 years had passed. Reckon the woods bewitched me, he'd say, his voice cracked as dry bark. And the children in her home, same age as you little ones leanin' in close, they stared wide-eyed, wondering if Grandpa spun fancies or truth. Rip learned quick enough that the world he knew had turned upside down. Back when he'd laid himself to rest, the land was ruled by the king across the sea. But now folks shouted for liberty, spoke proud of a new nation, and waved flags that bore stars instead of crowns. The very tavern he once knew as a place of idle chatter had become a hotbed of politics. Men arguing fierce about freedom, rights, and that General Washington who'd led him to victory. Rip scratched his head, feeling like he'd stepped out of a storybook and into another dot by golly. He wandered them streets hearing words that held no root in his memory. Elections, they cried, Congress, Republic, all new tongues for his ears. He'd known naught but fields, neighbors, a wife's scolding, and the solace of the forest. Now every face looked busy with new burdens, new freedoms, and Rip, well, he was but a relic stand-in their midst. Folks whispered when he passed, pointing at his long beard, his ragged clothes, muttering if he were mad or touched by spirits. Yet children, as always, clung near him, drawn to his gentleness. Ain't it curious, young'uns, how the little ones see truth quicker'n grown folk? They knew he was harmless, just lost in time. The night wind rustled through the village, carrying the smell of hearth smoke and fresh-baked bread, and Rip found himself mourning what was gone. His wife, fierce though she'd been, was a memory now, her voice silenced by death. His friends lay in graves, their laughter gone with the soil. Only the mountains stood the same, ridges leaning against the sky, unmoving, unchanging, like watchmen of eternity. And Rip, he felt a kinship with them, peaks unchanged inside, though the world below shifted like sand in a river dot. He took to sippin' on the stoop of the tavern, telling his story to whoever'd lend an ear. Some scoffed, saying he was touched by drink. Others leaned in close, half fearing, half believing, for the look in his eyes bore weight no lie could carry. The young men laughed, but the old-timers nodded slow, reckoning the woods held mysteries not yet spoke by science or scripture. And Rip, well, he became something of a living relic, a reminder of the time before, when the king's men ruled and life moved slower. The fire crackles low now, same as then, and I see y'all shifting, wondering if it be truth or fancy. But I tell you, young'uns, every wrinkle on Rip's face was etched by years he never lived, and every word he spoke carried the chill of that mountain night. Asterisk, so it was, young-uns, that Rip Van Winkle lived out his days as a man caught between two worlds, one he remembered and one that had outrun him. He never took to farming again, for that land had slipped from his hands like water through a sieve. Instead, he roamed the village lanes and mountain paths, leaning on his stick, beard flowing white as frost. Folks came to know him not as a farmer nor a husband, but as a tale-bearer, a wanderer of time. He'd sit by the tavern stoop, smoke curling upward from his pipe, and the children, oh, they flocked to him. Their eyes would shine like the embers you see glowing here, and he'd spin his yarn slow, letting the mystery hang in the air. He warned them, soft but steady, don't wish too hard for peace, lest the woods hear ya. Ain't always a blessin', sleepin' away the world. And the little ones shivered, imaginin' wakin' to find their mothers gray, their homes gone to ruin, their friends turned to dust. Rip's tale weren't just fancy, it was a caution, a shadow stretched long across the firelight. You reckon stories are only for passing the time? Nay, they's ropes we hold on to, keeping us tied to what was, reminding us what might be lost if we let go. Sure as shootin', if Rip's story fades, so too does the warning it carries. The fire here crackles low, the pines whisper overhead, and I see you leanin' close, breath held. That's how them young'uns sat when Rip told it hisself, night after night, till his voice rasped like wind through dry leaves. Some laughed, sayin' he was daft, but them who listened with their hearts, they felt the truth in his words. For ain't we all sleepwalkers sometimes? Ain't we all riskin' wakin' too late, findin' the world moved on without us? That's the thorn inside Rip's tail, pricking still, long after his bones were laid beneath mountain soil. By golly, Rip found peace in the end, not from his wife's silence nor from the drink that felled him, but from tellin'. That was his plow, his field sowing stories, reaping memory. And the children, bless their souls, they kept it alive. One would whisper it to another, one hearth to the next, till the tale stretched far as the ridges themselves. Even now, as the smoke curls upward and your faces glow in the firelight, I reckon you feel the weight of it. A man who slept 20 years, a man who woke to a world unrecognizable, and yet found his place again by holding tight to the only thing that don't wither. Story. So remember, young uns, when the fire dies and the night grows cold, carry Rip with you. Pass it on in your own words, tell your own tales, keep the embers glowing. Elsewise, stories turn to ash, and the silence swallows what once lived. Rip's long sleep may be ended, but the dream lingers still, walking the hills, ridden the wind, waiting for ears brave enough to listen. And now it rests with you, don't let it slip. Hold it close. Keep it alive.